What if I told you that a single legal filing has the power to shake Hollywood to its very core? A filing so shocking that it drags Blake Lively into a storm she never saw coming, with Taylor Swift's own words being used against her. This is not just another lawsuit. This is a drama filled with betrayal, mystery, and a fight for reputation that could leave careers in ruins. Tonight, we peel back the curtain on filings that are more dramatic than any movie script and reveal why this case has everyone in Hollywood holding their breath. The drama surrounding Blake Lively has taken yet another explosive twist as a legal filing emerged that not only pulls her deeper into a tangled web of jurisdiction battles and accusations, but also drags Taylor Swift into the narrative in a way that no one could have predicted, because what began as a straightforward fight over where this case should be heard has now evolved into a spectacle, with lawyers quoting Taylor Swift lyrics inside official court documents, sending shockwaves across the entertainment world, and forcing fans, journalists, and even fellow celebrities to stop and ask themselves, how did we get here? The case centers on Jed Wallace, who has been trying for months to free himself from Blake Lively's relentless legal pursuit, first dismissed due to jurisdiction, then pulled back in with amended complaints, and now once again fighting to escape what many see as a never-ending cycle of legal maneuvers. Lively initially claimed jurisdiction in Texas, then shifted to Los Angeles, and now is pushing for New York. But with every move, the filings against her grow sharper and more theatrical, highlighting not only the shifting strategies, but also the cracks in her legal foundation. And it was in this most recent filing that Wallace's attorneys decided to take a step so bold it instantly made headlines, and left even the most jaded observers stunned. In the middle of dry legal language appeared a phrase that every Swiftie recognized instantly: the colors of autumn are so bright, just before they lose it all. A direct line from Taylor Swift's iconic album, Red. This was not an accident. It was a deliberate choice by Jed Wallace's legal team to point out the ever-changing nature of Lively's claims, likening her shifting jurisdictional theories to the fleeting brilliance of fall colors before they vanish. It was a shot not just at her legal credibility, but at her public persona, knowing full well that such a reference would not go unnoticed by the media or the millions of Swift fans watching every move. Now imagine for a moment what it means for a Hollywood star to have her arguments dissected in a courtroom, not only by lawyers, but by the power of pop culture. References. This is no longer just about statutes and jurisdiction. This is about reputation, perception, and the ability to withstand the kind of scrutiny that blurs the line between celebrity gossip and legal reality. Kim, who has followed this case, closely noted that Jed Wallace's lawyers have built a reputation for crafting filings that carry a sting, a sassiness that grabs attention. And this was perhaps their boldest move yet. Because when lawyers start quoting pop songs in serious filings, you know they are sending a message, one that goes beyond the courtroom and straight into the headlines. But that was only the beginning as the filing continued. It took another swing, this time at one of Lively's own alleged mistakes in her pleadings. A social media post where she referred to herself as Blake Lively, at Blue Jean Baby NY Lady. But here the attorneys pounced, pointing out that anyone familiar with Elton John's classic song Tiny Dancer, or the unforgettable scene in the film Almost Famous, knows the lyric is not NY Lady, but LA Lady. The implication was devastating that her attempt to anchor her presence in New York through this reference was not only flimsy, but flat out wrong, undercutting her credibility in a way that borders on embarrassing, and the lawyers did not stop there. They mocked the very idea that such a post could serve as proof of jurisdiction, ridiculing the argument as absurd, and noting that if one were to follow Lively's logic, then any casual lyric could be twisted into evidence of geography. But in truth, it was nothing more than a weak attempt to stretch the facts and keep Wallace tethered to a court that should have no authority over him. By now, the tension was palpable, because it was clear this was not just a legal fight, it was a war of narratives, each side trying to paint the other as desperate, manipulative, or out of touch with reality. And in this war, words matter. Every phrase, every cultural reference, every jab carries weight, and that is why this filing has left so many stunned. It reads less like a traditional motion and more like a manifesto, dripping with subtext and carefully chosen language, designed to sway not just a judge, but the court of public opinion. And when observers saw Taylor Swift's name embedded within the legal attack against Lively, the story took on a life of its own. Social media exploded. Swifties dissected the move, lawyers debated the ethics of inserting lyrics into filings, and the press seized on the spectacle framing it as yet another humiliation for Lively, whose legal crusade increasingly appears to be unraveling before the world. This is the kind of legal theater that draws in audiences far beyond the courtroom because it taps into something deeper. The fascination with seeing powerful figures challenged in ways that strip away the glamour and leave them vulnerable. And now the question hanging over Hollywood is whether Blake Lively can withstand this relentless barrage, or whether she will eventually collapse under the pressure of her own shifting strategies, because the filing makes it brutally clear that her arguments are losing traction and her credibility is slipping piece by piece, leaving behind a trail of contradictions and half-formed claims that even the sharpest spin cannot erase. And as we peel back the layers of this first act in the latest filing, we see a picture forming, one where Blake Lively is no longer in control of the narrative. Instead, she is being dragged from one courtroom to another, from one jurisdictional theory to the next, like a character trapped in a story she cannot rewrite, and the lawyers on the other side know it. They are playing to the audience, both legal and public. They are turning her missteps into punchlines, and they are embedding those punchlines into the very fabric of the legal record, ensuring that every mistake, every miscalculation will live on, not just in gossip columns, but in the official history of this case. As the filing continued to ripple through legal circles and social media, another layer of drama unfolded, because this was not just about Taylor Swift lyrics or botched references to Elton John. This was about a much larger strategy that Blake Lively and her team had been pursuing, one that increasingly looked less like a carefully planned legal case and more like a desperate attempt to cling to control through sheer force of paperwork and subpoenas. Observers noted how Lively's approach shifted from grand conspiracy theories tying multiple people into an alleged plot against her to more narrow technical arguments about jurisdiction. But the constant reinvention of her story made it harder and harder to take seriously, and Jed Wallace's attorneys seized on this inconsistency like sharks circling in the water, highlighting again and again how she would retreat from one theory once it was challenged, only to launch another, as if hoping that one might finally stick. But the problem is that in law, as in life, credibility matters, and when a plaintiff repeatedly contradicts herself, it becomes harder for any judge to grant her claims the weight she so desperately wants. And here lies the true drama, because in a town like Hollywood, where image is everything, Blake Lively is not just fighting a legal battle. She is fighting a reputational war, and every filing, every motion, every subpoena becomes another weapon that could either shield her or cut her down. The stakes have never been higher, and that is why this filing landed like a bombshell, sending echoes not just across legal news but into mainstream outlets like The Hollywood Reporter, which, while covering Taylor Swift's prenup, quietly slipped in a section about Lively's sprawling subpoena campaign, revealing just how wide a net her lawyers have cast, and just how bizarre some of their targets have been, because when you subpoena a content creator with a single subscriber, the absurdity of the situation cannot be ignored. And it was in this moment that many began to question the true motives behind Lively's relentless push. Was this really about justice? Or was it about ego, about silencing criticism, about punishing those who dared to speak up against her narrative? Kim pointed out that Ken's, a small content creator with barely any following, was among those subpoenaed, a move that appeared to many as nothing more than harassment and intimidation. And when Ken's fought back by filing for sanctions, her motion laid out in stark terms what so many had suspected, that this lawsuit had been weaponized not as a tool for truth, but as a means of suppression. And her words struck a chord, because she argued that this kind of misuse of judicial authority threatened not just her own rights, but the fairness of the entire proceeding. It was a powerful statement, and while the odds of sanctions being granted remained slim, the message resonated loud and clear, especially among those who have watched the case spiral further and further away from reason into a spectacle of subpoenas, accusations, and filings that read more like tabloid scripts than serious legal arguments. The court of public opinion is merciless, and in this court, Blake Lively is beginning to lose ground, because every new twist only fuels the perception that this case has gone too far, that it has become less about accountability and more about control. And when Perez Hilton, a name that has long loomed in celebrity commentary, weighed in, suggesting that this was about ego, about the inability to accept that some people simply do not like her, the theory suddenly carried weight, because it aligned with what the filings seemed to show: a pattern of escalation where criticism was treated as conspiracy, and where the solution to negative commentary was not engagement or silence, but litigation. And this is where the suspense builds. Because if Lively continues down this road, How far will she go? How many more subpoenas will fly? How many more content creators, journalists, or even fellow celebrities could find themselves pulled into a battle they never asked for? The chilling effect is already visible. Smaller voices in the online space, fear speaking out, worrying. They could be next. And that fear is precisely what makes this case so unsettling, because it suggests a precedent where powerful figures can use the legal system not just to defend themselves, but to intimidate silence and reshape the narrative in their favor. Yet the irony is that this very attempt may be backfiring, because the more aggressive the strategy becomes, the more public backlash it generates, and the more people begin to question not just the legal merit of her claims, but the very character of the person making them. Hollywood thrives on perception, and in the world of red carpets, premieres, and carefully crafted images, reputational damage can be far more destructive than any legal loss. And so the suspense intensifies, as we ask, will Blake Lively find a way to salvage her standing? Or is this case dragging her closer and closer to a point of no return, where even victory in court would not erase the scars left in the public eye? Meanwhile, Jed Wallace's attorneys continue to push their narrative with skill and precision, painting Lively as inconsistent, untrustworthy, and even careless in her arguments, each filing another brick in the wall they are constructing to show that she has abused the process. And each cultural reference, from Taylor Swift to Elton John, another flourish designed to grab attention and ensure that this story never fades quietly into the background. The longer it continues, the more it feels like a drama without an ending. Saga that keeps pulling new players into its orbit and leaving the audience on edge, waiting to see what the next twist will be. As the storm surrounding Blake Lively intensifies, attention has turned not only to the legal filings themselves, but to the ripple effects spreading across Hollywood, because every motion, every subpoena, every sly cultural reference carries consequences. Beyond the courtroom, and as more names get pulled into the orbit of this case, the industry is starting to whisper about what this really means for the balance of power between celebrities, the media, and the public. For decades, stars have relied on carefully constructed images managed by teams of publicists, attorneys, and strategists. But this case is exposing the cracks in that armor, showing how quickly control can slip away once the narrative begins to unravel. And the irony is that the very tools meant to protect a reputation can sometimes accelerate its decline. Lively's strategy of issuing subpoenas to a wide range of commentators, from small channels with almost no following to larger names like Perez Hilton, created the impression not of strength, but of fragility. Because instead of silencing critics, it drew more attention to their words and more scrutiny to her actions. And when the Hollywood Reporter finally acknowledged the scope of these subpoenas, even burying it deep within an article about Taylor Swift's prenup, the revelation landed like a spark on dry tinder, igniting conversations across podcasts, live streams, and social media feeds. The question on everyone's lips was the same: why would someone at the height of fame resort to dragging such small voices into a legal war? And the answers that surfaced were anything but flattering: ego, insecurity, and inability to tolerate dissent. The theories spread like wildfire, and each one chipped away at the polished image that had been built over years of movie premieres, talk show appearances, and glowing magazine covers. Kim, who has tracked the case from the start, put it bluntly: this is not about law anymore. This is about perception. And when perception turns, the tide of public opinion can be impossible to stop. What makes this even more suspenseful is the sense that we are only seeing part of the picture, because behind every filing lies a strategy. Behind every subpoena lies an intent. And the deeper you look, the clearer it becomes that this is not just a battle between Blake Lively and Jed Wallace, but a broader clash over how far celebrities can go to control their own narratives in an age where anyone with a phone and an internet connection can become a voice in the conversation. The use of legal muscle against individuals with no power and no platform has struck a nerve, and it has raised uncomfortable questions about fairness, about privilege, and about whether the courtroom is becoming just another stage for performance. But unlike a film set, this performance carries real consequences, real costs, and real damage. The suspense tightens as we see Ryan Reynolds' name inevitably dragged into the background whispers of whether he will appear alongside Blake at premieres, or whether he will quietly step aside to avoid drawing attention away from his own projects. His absence or presence becomes a storyline in itself, because in Hollywood, appearances speak louder than words, and the image of a united front or a carefully orchestrated solo outing can send signals just as powerful as any press release. Yet even as this drama plays out on red carpets, another subplot is quietly unfolding away from the camera's reports that Blake and Ryan were spotted in more private settings suggests that whatever the turmoil in the legal sphere, their family life continues with some semblance of normalcy. But even these quiet moments become fodder for speculation. Was it a staged appearance to counter rumors? Was it genuine, an effort to shield their children from the chaos? Or was it simply a fleeting moment of calm in the eye of the storm? The lack of clarity only fuels the intrigue, keeping audiences hooked, because in a story like this, every detail matters, and every absence is as telling as every appearance. The most chilling element, though, is the possibility that this case could set a precedent if Blake Lively's broad use of subpoenas were to be validated even partially. What message would that send to other high-profile figures? Would they too begin to wield litigation as a weapon against critics, against small creators, against anyone who dares to comment? The fear of such a future is real, and it is already altering the way people approach celebrity commentary. Some voices grow quieter, others grow louder, emboldened by the backlash. And in this tension lies the beating heart of the suspense, because no one knows how far this will go. Will the judge finally put a stop to the overreach? Will sanctions ever be granted? Will Blake herself realize that the strategy is doing more harm than good? Or will the cycle continue spiraling into deeper and darker territory? The unpredictability is what keeps everyone, Watching lawyers, journalists, fans, even other celebrities are glued to the updates because the stakes extend beyond one actress or one lawsuit. They touch on questions of speech, of privacy, of power, and of the thin line between protection and suppression. And so the narrative marches on, relentless and unyielding, a spectacle that feels less like a court case and more like a serialized drama unfolding in real time, with each new filing serving as a cliffhanger that leaves the audience desperate for the next revelation. As this saga barrels forward, one thing has become undeniable. Blake Lively is no longer in control of the story she tried so hard to shape. What began as a legal battle over jurisdiction has spiraled into a spectacle where every filing, every subpoena, and every cultural reference is picked apart, not just by lawyers, but by millions of eyes across the world. Taylor Swift's lyrics, woven into a courtroom attack. Elton John's words used as a weapon against her credibility, and the revelation that even creators with one subscriber were dragged into this fight, all of it paints a picture of a case that has stretched far beyond its original purpose. The suspense now lies in what comes next. Will the courts finally draw a line and curb this escalating use of subpoenas? Will sanctions be imposed, sending a message that the legal system cannot be twisted into a tool for silencing dissent? Or will this saga drag on, pulling in more voices, more reputations, and more damage until the only ones left standing are the attorneys billing the hours? Hollywood thrives on reinvention, but here we see the danger of overplaying one's hand. Reputation is a fragile currency, and every dramatic filing chips away at the foundation Blake Lively spent years building. The irony is almost poetic. In trying to control the narrative, she may have lost it entirely. And so we wait. Each new filing becomes a cliffhanger. Each court date a season finale, and each leaked revelation another twist in a drama no screenwriter could have imagined. The question is not just whether Blake Lively can win this case, but whether she can survive the story. It has become a story that may end up defining her more than any role she has ever played.